Mary, do you want to read our introductory?
No problem. The planning board meeting will be held remotely in accordance with Governor Baker's March 10, 2020 declaration of a state of emergency in Massachusetts and March 12, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A 20, which relieves the public body of the requirement that it conduct meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public, provided that the public body makes provisions to ensure public access to the deliberations of the public body for interested members of the public through adequate alternative means. Adequate alternative means of public access shall mean measures that provide transparency and permit timely and effective public access to the deliberations of the public body. Such means may include, without limitation, providing public access through telephone, internet, or satellite-enabled audio or video conferencing, or any other technology that enables the public to clearly follow the proceedings of the public body while those activities are occurring. Where allowance for active real-time participation by members of the public is a specific requirement of a general or special law or regulation or ordinance or bylaw pursuant to which the proceeding is conducted, any alternative means of public access must provide for such participation. The video of the meeting will be posted on the town's website within 48 hours.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
All right. First, thank you everyone for assembling today. This is an opportunity to discuss an issue which is of concern. Martha, do you want to give a little bit of background, and then we'll turn it over to Lisa for a little bit?
Sure. So, and the concern is we have some ongoing public hearings. One which was scheduled to start tomorrow night, and a few which have already been started and continued. And we have some applicants who want to submit new applications. And we have some abutters who are very concerned about the inability for all interested parties to participate remotely if we have public hearings and public participation is a requirement. And so there are concerns being raised on both sides, applicants who want to move their projects forward, although I will say several have been very understanding, and abutters who are very concerned that not all interested parties are going to be able to participate because they don't have the technology.
Okay, that's great. That's a kind of a good intro to what our discussion today will be about. With that said, I'm going to turn this over to Lisa, just so you can give us kind of position of what's going on with Chapter 53 responsibilities and our interpretations.
Sure. Thank you, Pete. So Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020 was adopted about 10 days ago. And the legislature adopted a law that allowed the chair of any public body to make a determination about whether or not they're going to hold public hearings on permits. And permits basically includes anything that's in front of the planning board. So whether it's a subdivision, special permit, or an ANR. And so Pete could make the decision whether he wants to go forward or not, but he wants to consult with the board members on that. And so if the board decides to hold public hearings, then it can decide how to do that and which public hearings to hold, or they could wait until after the emergency is over and start scheduling your public hearings, even for open applications after the emergency is over, which is currently May 4th. The issue related to public hearings is how to make sure the public is involved. And it's not just the public viewing audio or separate video, but they have to be able to participate. And it's the public, not just the legal abutters. And so when we have a public hearing, we want to make sure all members of the public can participate, not just legal abutters, even though legal abutters would have a right to appeal. And so when you're making these considerations, you have to think about how the members of the public can fully participate in a public hearing process.
So kind of with that framing, we have the option of continuing our business, which we can do with this format, or we have the option of basically waiting on our business until the state of emergency is concluded. The concern, Lisa, that I think we need to articulate is where the Attorney General might position themselves on this at the end
Sure.
of the day.
I will, thank you. So when the governor's original emergency order went into effect that allowed remote participation in public hearings and meetings, the Attorney General took a position and looked very askant at the fact that it covered public hearings, which right now we're having a public meeting, right? The public has a right to know about it, but they don't have a right to participate in it. Most of the applications, not all, but most of the applications that appear before you are public hearings where the public has a right to participate. So in order to alleviate the concern of the Attorney General, in the Acts, Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, the legislature affirmed that what the governor had said in his original executive order was that remote participation was allowed for public hearings. However, the Attorney General is watching carefully to make sure that, in fact, if you have a public hearing, everybody can participate.
And if I understand correctly, the problem would be if there's an individual who wants to voice their concerns and they're unable to voice their concerns, and an appeal could potentially take place, which would create a situation and a concern for our board and the town, as well as an applicant who brings something before, which is a much longer dragged out process. So we're here to discuss how this board would like to go forward during this emergency. And I'm blessed because I have 3 attorneys sitting on this call, which is wonderful because I don't have to pay for any of them, which is fantastic. So.
And just to add, it's a question not only about public hearings, but in general, sort of policies and procedures for all applications that come in during this time, including approval not required plans, which don't require a public hearing, but for which some people might want to have input, as well as the public hearings.
Any opportunity for public comment is, I think, what we're talking about here.
Personally, I don't see how it is possible, given this technology that we're using now, to include all of those in a public hearing who would want to be included. I see a tremendous amount of openings for maybe not so much legal, but disputes. I couldn't get on. We kept getting shut off. I don't have a computer. It doesn't seem to me to be fair to everyone in the town who wants to participate in a public hearing. At this point, the other business I think is fine, but the public hearing is problematic just in my perspective.
Other members?
Well, I agree with Mary. I think finding ourselves now just to matters that require a public hearing, as other than ANRs. I think for me it's a fairly easy decision, and I'd note that we don't necessarily, and we as a town don't necessarily have to be sitting on our hands in the interim. I mean, we can move the ball forward, Martha, by beginning peer review on these various applications and that type of thing.
Right. And that's already, yes.
Yeah, and these things are never concluded in 1 or 2 or even more sessions. So for matters requiring public hearings, again, I think it's to my mind, a fairly easy decision that we ought to take advantage of the stay and hold off on holding public hearings on those matters. A&R is a little more difficult. And I'd be interested in what anyone else thinks about that.
George?
Yeah, I agree with Larry. I think Lisa will make the best recommendation in favor of the town one way or the other. And that would be in the best interest of the board also. As a practical matter, I find it very difficult to satisfy the requirements to have solid participation by those who are entitled to, unless everybody has a Zoom network that they can call in on.
Leslie?
Yeah, I have to agree basically with what everybody else has said. If those people can't participate and they feel that they've been left out of the process, it could come back to bite us in the backside. I think it would end up making the process longer, having to possibly go back and renegotiate or go through the process again with another public hearing because the first one, let's say, does shut down and everybody gets cut off. And I think it would be confusing also that anybody who wants to participate outside of the board to have them make singular remarks and, you know, that nobody talking over one another as they have to get up at a public meeting and speak individually.
Woody?
You see me, Peter?
No, I'm directing towards you, your opinion.
I agree with everyone else. I don't know how you'd run a orderly form of comments, and if not everyone has access to it, it's not fair to not have, you need public comment. So.
Okay, so Lisa. Yes.
So there's a mechanical one too. I do want to add that there have been plenty of people, towns that have run meetings where there are multiple people, and it is certainly cumbersome, but it can happen. My bigger issue is not the organization of the meeting, although it can be tricky, but rather the notice to the public and the ability of the public to participate. So I do want to make that clear. I said, well, it is cumbersome and certainly not easy to run a meeting like this with multiple people. It's possible. My issue that is necessary to overcome is the risk that some member of the public can't participate. And that's my underlying risk.
Okay. So I think on the matter of public hearings, I think from polling everyone's on the same page that it's not appropriate to continue with any public hearings. With that, I want to ask the question of doing business, hearing applicants which might require or have the ability for the public to comment on. How do we feel about that particular situation? So if we have an A&R and you don't necessarily, it's not a public hearing, but a public individual could comment upon something. If we're not facilitating that, should we also take that into the consideration of what our discussion should be? And as Larry said, we can continue with peer review taking place so everything can be queued up so that in 4 weeks, we could just, continue on. So now I'm opening up the question beyond just public hearing, but us doing our business in general. Should we continue that, understanding that the public can't comment on anything, or should we also hold that until the emergency? So I'll go around again. Do you want to start off, Larry?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the same principle, isn't it? Whether or not the public has a meaningful ability to comment on these things. I wish I had a crystal ball and knew for sure when this was all going to end, but I don't. So I guess my thinking at the time, for the time being, is that we probably should continue everything rather than take up any matters at the meeting. At least, assuming, let's say we find next month that it's continued for an extended length of time, the current state of emergency. Would there be anything to stop us from revisiting this decision at that time?
No, you can revisit it anytime. There's not any, I mean, you could revisit it in a week or 2 weeks if you wanted to. If, I suspect that if there's any changes that happen towards May 4th, I think you're gonna see more orders coming down regarding these kinds of meetings and how they can be held and what kind of public notice it is.
Okay,
But the current statute allows the chair to make a call at any time.
yeah, May 4th is not that far off,
No,
keep our fingers crossed and hope that we're back in business as usual by then. But at this point, I'm inclined to think we should just continue everything.
George?
I don't think we have a choice but to continue because we don't know how long this will go on. I think May 1 is probably not going to happen. And I think this will be extended. And Lisa made a good point, which is we'll be getting more instructions from the governor about what we can and can't do. I just think that anything where there's a public hearing and the public needs to be involved, has a right to be involved, and the access is not fair, that we can't do that, but we should continue as much as we can to get our business done, because this could go on for quite a while and put the town in a bind that will be difficult to overcome in the future.
George?
The board members are elected by the people of the town, townsmen. And I think we represent them in the best interest. And if they can't see what we're doing, we're not representing them well.
I agree.
Leslie?
I agree with that statement, George, very much. As the governor has informed us recently that we haven't even had our apex yet, which isn't even going to probably about on the more to the 20th. So I think that we're going to probably be seeing the state of Massachusetts continue their lockdown for a longer period of time. I agree that we can continue with the peer points and all that, and like you said, get it all queued up and prepared a little bit more substantially. But at this time, I don't see how we would be doing the public any justice to go on without including them in on it.
Okay, thank you. Woody?
I agree. There's no, everybody's pretty much said anything that I could say. As far as it goes, we need to have public input. This time we can't do it. So if we delayed everything and see how things go and see what the future brings, we'll move on from there, because basically we could just start them all up again, right? So in a month or whenever that time comes. I'm not real optimistic that May 4th we'll be back in business. So as far as a public meeting setting, so we'll wait for further instructions as to how we put public comment into it, and at this time just suspend the hearings. That's basically what we do, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So does that mean suspending action on all applications, including the hearings, as far as you're all concerned?
I think that's what I'm hearing, Martha.
Yeah.
We broke the public hearing, then we broke basically, anything that would require public comment other than public hearings. So I think at this time, that's probably where the board is kind of directing the conversation, and I respect that and comfortable with that position. And I know, Lisa, that you've been on both sides of this discussion, both representing both sides, and if you're articulating concerns and appreciating both sides, then I think we need to pay attention as you are our counsel. Okay. Martha, would you like this in the form of a motion, or because this would have an effect on what we're going to do tomorrow or not do tomorrow, basically?
Okay,
It does-
if-
Yes, Larry.
Just a point of procedure, I guess.
Please.
We do have several members of the public who are participating, but they're muted. Do we want to hear from them?
Well, actually, this is a meeting of the board. It's not so much a public hearing because I really want
No,
to
I
get
know that. I know
yeah.
it's.
I want to get a
Flavor.
flavor for this, and not that I don't want to hear from anyone. We've been receiving comments, and Martha's been kind of keeping track of them. Applicants with valid points, abutters with valid points, and we could go through and we could hear those. And I feel that if I'm hearing all of one side and I don't hear enough of the other side, we could kind of get a weighted discussion. I understand that there are valid concerns on both aspects, and that's that's appreciated. However, I think what we need to decide as a board, and I think we have, what our business will be or not be. So I'm
Agreed.
comfortable with
Agreed.
moving that forward. I just need to know kind of procedurally, Martha, is it best that we have this documented as a form of the motion from our board that this is what we're going to do, and we're going to basically hold our business, and that will affect tomorrow's activity.
I guess maybe I would turn to town council to see what you would recommend.
So that's solely up to you, Pete, because the statute allows you to make the decision. But I think that since the board has talked about it, you might as well take a motion from the board to back up your decision. And at this point, the statute says you can continue them to tomorrow night. They're going to need to be continued, or you're going to need to re-advertise. So you continue them to the first meeting after the emergency is over. So I don't know what date that is. And that way that would save you an advertisement, right? I mean, you may want to do whatever you're going to do to let people know anyway, but if you continue it to the date and time certain, and the statute says if you didn't make this decision and you never met, it would be to the first public hearing after the emergency is over, not longer than 45 days. So you could just continue to that date if you wanted.
Then I would entertain a motion.
So may it just be, so Lisa, are you suggesting that we set dates now, or should we set dates tomorrow?
No, you're going to set dates tomorrow when you have that hearing. But if you can all say that that's what you want to have happen tomorrow night, so that's you know the direction, that you don't want to have public hearings during this process or meetings during this process, and that you will tomorrow night say that they'll be continued to a date and time certain.
So that means no meetings. Well, actually, this is the last meeting before tomorrow is the last meeting before the state of emergency is lifted. So
there you go.
Well, how about if we simply move, there was a resolution to support the chair's decision to continue all agenda matters pursuant to, what is it, Chapter 80 of the Acts of 2020?
Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020.
Okay. So that's a motion, Larry?
Yes.
could you restate that, please?
Well, I put it in the form of a resolution to support the chair's decision to continue all matters and pursuant to Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020. And Pete can state tomorrow night when and how they're being continued to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Second.
Second.
On the resolution, do we need to do votes, roll call, or can we just do a vote?
Roll call.
Yep. You need a roll call on all virtual meetings.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Larry, roll call.
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Woody? Pete is yes. Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate everyone's participation in this. I think it's important that we all be on the same page in our decision making as a board. That's I think it's important that we should also as well. So we will need. Yes, go ahead, Martha.
So questions. So we do have a number of items on our agenda tomorrow night, above and beyond hearings. And so does this, I guess, a couple questions. Is there anything that should be posted on a revised agenda to reflect this? And do we I'm not quite sure exactly procedurally how to proceed.
So you can certainly post a revised agenda to say at the very beginning, the chair's determination to continue hearings, and then he can make that declaration tomorrow night.
Okay, and should we continue with any of the other business we had on the agenda?
Not, well, that's up to the chair, but not based upon what was just said.
I mean, some of
Nothing
it
that,
was
nothing that would
discussed.
require, nothing that would require public input. So I would think that that would probably mean that the meeting itself would be, we would open the meeting, indicate that we're going to probably not do any business until after the state of emergency has been lifted, and then we can do our time certain for our continuations, if I understand that right, Lisa.
That's correct.
Okay, and we had public hearings at 3 different times. Can we make a blanket statement just at the beginning?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so we don't need to wait for 7, 7:15, 7:30.
No.
Okay,
So we'll all reconvene tomorrow evening at 7. Is that our start
7.
time? Yeah.
7.
And we'll have our agenda in place, and we'll go from there.
But basically nothing will be discussed.
Correct.
We
Okay,
will convene, and then we will say thank you very much.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Everyone, thank you very much, and have a good remainder of your day.
Lisa, thank you.
Great
Lisa.
communication.
Appreciate it.
No
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you, Lisa. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right,
Night,
bye-bye.
guys. Take care.